Meanwhile, chaos in Washington threatens the future of American support. With no speaker in place in Congress, aid requests by the president are so far dead in the water. Andriy Zagorodnyuk was Ukrainian defense minister and is now a government advisor, and he's joining me now. Welcome back to the program. Can I ask you, Andriy, whether you feel that your story and your existential crisis there is somehow fallen off the radar? Do you feel that?
No, we don't feel that. We, of course, see that there's another major conflict started in the world. And obviously, it takes a lot of the attention, but rightfully so, because it's an absolutely unjust war and totally tragic. But we cannot say that this is an area where we're just fighting for attention or something like that. We expect our partners to be strategically minded, and that's what we see from most of the governments which we work with. And it's not about like who gets more air. It's about us following the strategic path with our key allies, key partners. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. So I understand you, but of course the narrative and public opinion is very important. But mostly also, it's not just about being off the air. It's about not getting Congress in the United States to be able to even put a vote to the floor to vote for and to approve or not what President Biden has asked for. Does that concern you, or do you feel you have enough for the moment to get through this crisis of paralysis in Washington?
For the moment, we have. We also see a massive support of American people. We see the substantial support of both parties. We do see that there is some political element, and there's a lot of political pre-election sort of a process, which sometimes some politicians are using Ukraine as a tool in their political battles. Sometimes they use the verbiage, and sometimes they use the approaches which we are surprised to see. Particularly when they misinform public about the certain things about Ukraine, particularly how the war goes or how the assistance provided and so on. But generally, we're seeing a support of a few United States, a few U.S. people, and we are hoping and expecting that they would make a right decision according to their strategic interests.
So let me ask you about the counteroffensive then. It's obviously everybody, raised it to an impossible level and then started to talk about how it wasn't doing well. But in recent days, we have heard that your forces have broken through in various parts. The ATACMS apparently have been used against Russian attack helicopters and other such things. Tell us what you can about the state of the counteroffensive.
Well, Ukrainian forces are moving in some areas incrementally, in some areas with a limited success, in some areas with a much more success. For example, there's been a crossing of the Dnieper in Kherson area, and there's been a whole number of other advances. But more importantly, also, we need not to forget that Russia is currently starting its own offensive against Ukraine, particularly in the north of Donetsk. And it is failing, and we provide a lot of resources there. It's going extremely hard. There's, again, a lot of casualties, but Russia putting immense resources there. In the beginning of this interview, you mentioned that Russia has another a spike in casualties, and that's related to this process, because they're just again throwing people to the fire regardless of the outcome. So that part goes is extremely intense, and but Ukraine is definitely standing on these positions.
Talking about Russia, the UN Commission now has found new evidence of Russian war crimes in your country: deliberate killings, rape, the removal of Ukrainian children, as we've been reporting ever since the war started. But also accuses Ukrainian forces of abuses, like 3 cases of mistreatment of Ukrainians who'd been accused of collaborating with Russia. Talk to us about your response to this.
Well, first of all, first of all, any war is a crisis, and different people react differently to the crisis. And it's always the situation when people are and the systems are working in extreme pressures, and not all people making right decisions. And what government needs to do in these cases is to make the right decisions and to make a right response. However, what we need to understand is that the balance of these situations is totally different, because we're talking about thousands of cases from Russia. We're talking about tens of thousands of children missing. We're talking about immense suffering of the civilian population. And what we saw right now from the UN report is what we all seen before, and that's been reported by reporters, by human rights analysts and activists, like for over a year, for over a year and a half now. So right now, what we see is basically official confirmation of those claims which have been done before, and but we are very much in the beginning of this process. There's a lot of the atrocities which haven't yet been covered by UN. And so in the future, we will see more and more of reports like that. And it's truly shocking. But, for people who read it first time, but Ukraine goes through this sadly on a daily basis.
So clearly there is no equality between the atrocities committed against you and some of the abuses by Ukrainian soldiers. But just to be clear, you believe that your system will hold any Ukrainian soldier or anybody accountable if they're seen to have violated international law and committed crimes?
We see this on a regular basis, that all kinds of, well, first of all, Ukraine is a democratic country, and democratic country is transparent. And everything which goes wrong, whether it's reported by UN or it's not reported by UN, sometimes it's reported by Ukrainian media, immediately gets into the press, immediately gets for the public knowledge. This is, as I said before to you in a previous interview, this is the most transparent war in the history of the world. And Ukraine shows its people that rule of law means something in this country, and that it's a country which lives according to the European standards. So obviously there's a reaction, and obviously there are steps.
I want to play a soundbite from President Zelensky. It's a while ago. I think it's a while ago, where he's obviously Jewish himself, and he put all his sympathies and the sympathy and support of Ukrainian people to Israel after October 7th, and he encouraged leaders to go and see what had happened. But he's recently said this, drawing comparisons between Hamas and Russia. Let me just play this.
Terrorists like Putin or like Hamas seek to hold free and democratic nations as hostages, and they want power over those who seek freedom. The terrorists will not change. They just must lose. And that means we must win. We do. It requires patience. It requires steady and continuous support. We need to take the right steps that save lives of the people for real.
So just a brief last question. Do you think he will visit Israel? I don't know whether you're in a position to be able to say that. And do you think this narrative that he's putting out now and his support, because you need to get the global South on side, do you think that's more or less likely to happen now?
Well, I sincerely hope that he visits. That depends on Israel, and so we have to see what they say. What we need to understand is that this war indeed has some shocking similarities. So one of them is abruptness, of course. Secondly, it's the fact that there's been almost irrational cruelty, very transparent, which the whole world sees, thrown on the civilian people. And we believe, yes, there is some common agenda in this case, because the people are like whoever is attacking, whoever is aggressor, is basically threatening the world order and saying, okay, we will do that. The whole world will see that, and we will get out of this without any or some limited repercussions to our side. And that's what the world needs to not to allow, because we need the Ukrainian war to become a positive precedent for the future history. And that is only possible if aggressor loses and aggressor clearly suffers for what they're doing.
Okay.
If that doesn't happen, we've always been saying that the wars like that will repeat. Some people say, well, Russia will attack other countries. But as we see right now, it's not necessarily going to be Russia. It could be other wars repeating a Ukrainian war pattern in this. And that's what we need not to allow.
Okay.
So that's why the democratic world need to have a very common strategy about this.